What's going on, guys? It's Cimo. So today I want to bring to you a discussion on something that's been irking me as of late, and that is the inconsistencies in Yu-Gi-Oh! And why this needs to stop. Now, inconsistencies in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is really nothing too new if you've been playing the game for a long time, but I feel that this is getting to the point where it really is having a drastic impact on the game, and I feel it's really negatively affecting the player base to the point that it's really just widening the chasm between Konami and the player base as a whole. So I want to make this video as a little bit of constructive feedback for Konami, and I really hope that they can take this video to heart, because I feel that just by pretty much deflecting any more negativity away from them, if they are watching this video, which who knows if they will, I want to just kind of help improve the game so that these issues don't happen in the future. So before we get into that though, I want to give a huge shout out to my newest patrons as always. So big shout outs today to Isaac. You are the reason that this channel is growing strong. And if you guys want to help support me in the channel through Patreon, then check out the Patreon link in the description below. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. So, for the purposes of this video, I want to clarify that I'm not going to be discussing about different card pools for different regions, or even different rulings for different regions, because, when it comes to card pools, Japan and the OCG, they get sets about 1 or 2 sets at a time before we do here in the TCG, and frankly, I'm totally okay with that. That's not really the issue. The issue when it comes to card pools is that, when we get cards that are localized in the form of jump promos that, we get here in North America that Europe doesn't get, that's when I take issue with it, especially when it's cards that have a massive impact on the competitive format. Cards like Utopia the Lightning, Link Karibo, hell, even Summon Sorceress. That's the brand new jump promo that we're going to be getting probably in June or July. And the fact that Europe doesn't get these cards for months later, if not years in some instances, really just splinters and divides the format, meaning that even though you're in the TCG, you're playing 2 completely separate games. Then you have issues when it comes to rulings as well, because in some areas like Europe and Asia, cards function differently in terms of how they interact, like for instance with, something like Satellar Knight Deneb, Call the Haunted and Mystical Space Typhoon. That ruling's something that in Europe and Japan functions completely differently than how it functions here in North America. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to be solely talking about basically cards having their text change, that their cards essentially interact in a completely different way in one region that they would in another, because I feel that this is something that's been getting worse and worse as time's been going on, and I feel that it's something that we really have to talk about. This all started when Konami recently released an article on the Konami blog about the Nightmares coming out in Flames of Destruction, and a lot of people were excited about the Nightmares, but what caused a little bit of controversy was in regards to Nightmare Goblin. Now, Nightmare Goblin's effect text reads as follows. It says, if this card is link summoned, you can discard 1 card. If this card was co-linked when this effect was activated, you can draw 1 card. Also, during your main phase this turn, you can normal summon 1 monster from your hand to your zone this card points to, in addition to your normal summon or set. So, when you read this text, it seems pretty straightforward. Basically, you discard the card to activate the effect. If it's co-linked, you also get to draw a card, but if not, it doesn't matter, and you just also get bestowed with a additional normal summon in something similar to that of, say, Gem Knight Seraphonite. Now, what caused the controversy with this was in the article, the author explicitly stated, quote, co-linking is a must here. Without a co-link, you won't get the extra summon. Now, this caused just a massive amount of headache for a lot of players, because anyone who follows the game just as strictly as someone like myself, or someone who's just really into Yu-Gi-Oh!, someone might have read this and been confused, because in the OCG, co-linking wasn't necessary, and as we know with link summoning, having a card co-linked compared to not having a card co-linked are 2 completely different separate things. So I feel that, this was just a really big piece of news, especially because the Nightmares had such a profound impact on the OCG's format. A lot of people were starting to question, wait, how is this going to affect us? Because if this card functions completely differently, then these cards might not have as tremendous of an impact as they did in the OCG format. Now, what was interesting about this is that only 24 hours later, just one day later, the author actually went back, edited the article, and there was no remains of the text saying that this card had to be co-linked, basically quelling any confusion or any rumors that the card might not work as intended. And to be fair in their defense, I guess it's good that they clarified this, but at the same time, everyone who already read this article, especially with how fast information travels now with the use of social media and things like that, the damage had already been done, and people were still questioning what was going on, what was happening. But the thing that I want to be critical of here, what harm would it have done Konami if they went on the official Yu-Gi-Oh! Twitter or on the official Yu-Gi-Oh! Page and basically came out and said, you know what, guys, we're sorry. We saw that there was a mistake in the article in regards to Nightmare Goblin. You know, it said that it had to be co-linked, but we just wanted to clarify that it doesn't have to be. It was a mistake on our part, and we're sorry. That would have just been like the greatest piece of PR that they possibly could have done, because it makes them look good because they're actually addressing an issue that the community was bringing up, and this community is pretty vocal when it comes to a lot of these things, and also it's addressing the issue at hand. They're basically saying that they made a mistake, it doesn't have to be co-linked, and the card functions as intended. And especially with a card like this that's going to be used at the higher tiers of competitive play, I feel that's very important for these things to be as clear as possible. Semantics matter in Yu-Gi-Oh! And as we all know, words and even just having one word change can just make the absolute difference between a card being phenomenal and a card being absolute shit. And that's going to move us on to my other point here. Now, the thing is, I'm not going to be talking about cards that have, mistaken, text, like, say for instance, the Prime Monarch on the Super Rare version from the OTS pack that says Crards instead of cards. No, we're going to be talking about cards in particular like Altergeist Hextia and Altergeist Manifestation. With the release of Flames of Destruction came Altergeist Multifaker and basically brought Altergeist into the competitive spotlight. But the thing is, Altergeist Hextia and Altergeist Manifestation actually had changes in their card text from the translations that actually make them function in completely different ways than they would have in the OCG. Let's start with Altergeist Hextia. Altergeist Hextia's old text in the OCG says that it can negate the activation or effects of spell or trap cards. Here in the TCG, however, though, Altergeist Hextia can only negate the activation of spell or trap cards. That's a really big fucking difference when you think about it between just activations and effects, because think about how many other effects of spells and traps that a card like this could possibly negate if it's able to negate face-up spell or traps that are already face-up on the field, or, effects of spells and traps in graveyards, wherever. Having that just solely relegated to only the first initial activations of spell or trap cards is a really big deal in terms of how the cards function in the game. And that brings us on to Altergeist Manifestation. Now, Altergeist Manifestation pretty much just went through a 3-word change, changing the conjunction of "and if you do" to "and." Now, this may not seem like a big change, but in terms of how PSCT works and how you're trying to figure out how these cards function, it actually makes a really big difference, because while both of these things are going to happen simultaneously in terms of the effect, basically, in terms of PSCT, this card does not function the same here in the TCG as it would in the OCG. In the OCG, they can do stuff like, say, chain something that can bounce the Altergeist Manifestation back to the hand and still get the special summon off of the manifestation because of the fact that the card says "and if you do." However, because now it says "and," here in the TCG, we are not allowed to do that. And I'm not saying this because I'm like a salty Altergeist player or anything. I would be saying this about any archetype's cards, because when you inherently change how these cards are supposed to work in any given archetype, that means that you're basically going and taking how something works from one region and making it completely different in another. how is that exactly fair or fun to the people who actually look forward to playing that deck? How is that fair for the people who knew that these cards have existed for all this time, but now they find out that when the cards get printed in the TCG, oh, guess what? This card and this card don't work exactly how they were meant to be because, you know, when they came over and they got translated from Japanese into English, yeah, you know, we just decided to either not translate it properly or we just decided to modify the card as a whole. I don't think that's healthy for the game. I really feel like this is something that needs to be addressed and really be fixed, because what worries me is the fact that all of this has happened within a very short time span. These Altergeist cards are not that old, and this whole dispute with Nightmare Goblin, which luckily the text of Nightmare Goblin didn't actually reflect what happened in the article, thank God. However, I just feel like this is something that they need to stop making mistakes like this. Semantics are so important in Yu-Gi-Oh! And the wording on every individual card can mean so much. And, you know, if this happened on cards that weren't going to have such a competitive impact when it comes to their release, maybe I wouldn't feel as strongly about this, but I feel that because, you know, this is a game that people love, and especially when people have been preparing and practicing for, you know, any events or anything like that, and they come to find out that their cards aren't supposed to function as intended, it doesn't make them look good as a company, which, you know, we're not really going to get into that here. I just wanted to pretty much highlight these points and really address something that is becoming a more and more pervasive issue. I feel like this is something that's very important because when it comes to like ruling cards differently, or when it comes to cards being available in different regions, that's totally fine as long as the cards still function the same in those regions. I don't necessarily have as big of a gripe with that. Where the gripe comes in is where the cards just don't even function as intended. Like, that would just be like if you're saying you're gonna change the levels of certain monsters, or like changing the attack values of certain monsters, or just changing the effects of the monsters altogether. Like, at that point, we're not even playing the same game because they can just go about changing whatever they want on whatever card they want and just say, oh, you know what, that's okay, whatever. I just don't see that being beneficial for anyone. So, guys, that's it for the video today. I really just wanted to bring this up to you and kind of just get a discussion going, really to just emphasize these points that I feel that really should be addressed and really just be more carefully looked at moving forward into the future. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this issue as a whole. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Be sure to like the video as always. Subscribe to the channel for more amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. And if you found this video informative, consider backing me on Patreon, because just by pledging only $1 a month, you're investing in my ability to continue bringing you amazing Yu-Gi-Oh! Content. So thanks so much again, and we'll see you next time. 1, 2, 3, 4.